Hello, everyone. I'm Florida Today engagement editor John A. Torres, and we're excited to bring you more of our 2022 election coverage. Joining us today is Republican Congressman Bill Posey, seeking his 8th two-year term to the 8th U.S. congressional seat. And we also have his challenger, Democrat Joanne Terry. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for doing the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We are going to give you each about 1 minute to make your opening remarks just about your background and what makes you qualified to serve. Because P is before T, we will start with the congressman. So Congressman Bill Posey, why should we be voting for you?
Well, thank you, John, and thank Florida Today for holding this forum, and thank those for watching it. As Florida Today once said, I'm a problem solver, and I lead by example. I begin every year giving back the pay raise Congress passed before I even got there. I'm unapologetically 100% America first. We must stop inflation and turn this economy around. We need to go back to $2 a gallon gas, fair grocery, and housing cost. To do that, we must again become energy independent. We must secure our border, take it back from the drug cartels, terrorists, and human traffickers. Support our police, not defund them. Support the restoration of our lagoon and a continued robust space program. Those are some of the common sense policies I've supported and will continue to support if I'm your congressman. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Congressman. And now, Joanne Terry, the same thing, your opening statement.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having this forum today and for everyone who's watching. I'm Joanne Terry. I'm a retired satellite systems engineer, and I've lived in the Satellite Beach area for about 18 years. I'm running because I want to end the divisive culture wars and return representation to the people of this district and not the national parties or special interests. I spent my career leading teams to solve problems that I have never faced before. I gather the right people, I ask the right questions, we assess the options, we compromise, and we solve the problem. And that is what engineers do. And that is what I will do as our next representative. After 14 years of the same representation, it's time for a change. I will work to protect our democracy, our rights, our environment, and work to ensure our economic growth is both inclusive and equitable. And I've just been endorsed by the National Security Leaders for America because they recognize I'm the better candidate in this race to protect our democracy. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you both. Somebody's phone is going off, I think. I'm not sure. Okay. And you both hit on topics that I will be asking about, so that's great. So I really appreciate that. But right now, we're going to start with Joanne Terry. Our state just experienced a catastrophic storm with Hurricane Ian. Do you think that the federal government should help to rebuild Southwest Florida, and to what extent?
Sure. Seeing the loss of life and destruction from Hurricane Ian is almost surreal. And the damage really is very widespread, right? From the destruction on the West Coast to the flooding in the center of the state and the large sewage spills that we've been encountering in this district because of our aging infrastructure. And we're seeing more of these big destructive hurricanes here in this decade, in the last 2 decades. And next year we can get a direct hit. But by then, there's not going to be any more insurance money left because all of the private insurance companies will have gone bankrupt or left the state because there's no business model to make for them to make money in Florida. So yes, we have to rethink insurance. We have to rebuild in a way that's more resilient, that respects Mother Nature and protects our natural water flow. So, if I were our representative this last week, I would have voted to allow FEMA to use their whole allocation for disaster relief funding, because right now we can't leave those people stranded. That's what they are expecting. That's what they were counting on. But I do think that we should widen the FEMA help to include relocating people so that we don't have to rebuild so densely. And I do think we need to rethink FEMA because between the fires in the West, the floods in the middle of the country, and the hurricanes in the South, it is going to break the bank. So we need more regionally based solutions, and we need to build with.
I have to stop you there, Joanne. Thank you. Same question for you, Congressman. Do you think that the federal government should help to rebuild Southwest Florida, and to what extent?
Yes. I've been remembering those who are suffering in my prayers. Florida has survived massive hurricanes in the past, and we'll do it again with the help we are getting from so many. And I want to thank all those who are assisting in our recovery. We went through a similar issue in 2005, 2006, when every county in this state was affected by a series of 6 hurricanes. I was asked to provide in a special session relief because virtually every insurer was pulling out of the state. I did that. I brought the rates down 25%. That's when I was in the Florida legislature, who is in charge of regulating insurance. So I understand a little bit about this. We have a big need to reform the National Flood Insurance Program. They said that they couldn't reform the program, which has a limit of $25 billion of debt they're allowed to carry, which Congress erases from time to time so they don't exceed the statutory amount. They said it would take $500,000 in 5 years to get new maps to recalculate the insurance premiums so that they're fair and affordable.
I'm going to stop you right there, Congressman. I'm sorry, but it's time. But the next question, we are starting with you, and it's about insurance. So for the Congressman right now, and also for Joanne Terry, after he's done, a lot of people I've spoken to can't afford home insurance right now, and they have let it lapse. What can or what should our federal government do to help make insurance more affordable and accessible?
Well, property insurance, as I mentioned in the last answer, is in the domain of the Florida legislature. The U.S. Congress does not regulate insurance. The role that the U.S. Congress would have was in the National Flood Insurance Program, which has been running at a deficit forever. It needs to be reformed greatly to make it much more affordable and much more fair. People who live on the water should pay more than people who live 2 miles inland. That's not always the case. That's why I passed an amendment to make the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and NOAA share their maps because they have current maps of every inch of this country. There's no need to spend $500,000 and take 5 years to analyze the maps when we already have those things available.
Great, thank you. And Joanne, same question for you. What should the federal government do to help to make insurance more affordable?
Sure. Well, while it's true that the private insurance industry is under the domain of the states, FEMA is a federal program. And when that insurance fails or it doesn't meet the needs of the people, then FEMA is expected to step in and asked to step in. So from that perspective, there is a federal interest in making sure that the state insurance markets are solvent and that they can meet the needs of the people. So I think we really need to rethink the whole system in terms of whether or not they, how they do their risk pools, how much profit they're taking, because insurance for profit is really, it seems kind of counterintuitive when you pay a company to expect to get money back when there's a problem, and they're motivated to give you as little as possible back, and then they take the difference and they call that profit. There are certain things like the insurance industry where I feel like the consumers are getting taken advantage of from that perspective. And because the federal government backstops that financially, I think that we need to at least take our seat at the table to figure out how to make that whole system more solvent when it's needed.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with you, Joanne, on this next question. The heart of this area is the Indian River Lagoon. Joanne, what would you do to help the lagoon? And for Congressman Posey, it will be, tell us something you've done in the last year or so to help the lagoon.
Well, thank you very much for that question. Yes, the Indian Lagoon is still in really serious trouble, and we've had national attention this year with all of the manatee deaths. I live here on the Grand Canal of the Indian River, and I've seen the water degrade over the past decade. And with all the differences that we have politically, wanting to save the Indian Lagoon is actually an issue that we can really unite around, because everybody wants to protect the recreational and economic benefits that it provides. So I did take the pledge to not take any money from Big Sugar, and I do not take money from real estate developers. So I will partner with local and state representatives to fight for the federal resources to get the additional funding that we need to really deal with our sewage infrastructure and build the 21st century water treatment plant that we need. And I will also work towards incentives for developers to implement low impact development techniques, and also work to get the fiscal and legislative commitment that we need for the 20-year comprehensive plan to actually restore the lagoon and make significant progress. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so, Congressman Posey, can you tell us something you've done in the last year or so to help the Indian River Lagoon?
Yes, To put it in perspective, John, there's really a two-part solution to restoring our lagoon. Number one, stop putting bad stuff in it. Number two, remove the bad stuff that's already in it. To that end, I created the bipartisan Congressional Estuary Caucus, which gives our lagoons a greater voice in Congress than just one person fighting for one lagoon at a time. Restored the National Estuary Program funding after OMB zeroed it out several times. Restored funding for the Prescott Marine Mammal Research and Rescue Program, passed the Harmful Algae Bloom and Hypoxia Research and Control Act, created an Estuary of Urgent Needs Priority Program Act, and we just renewed that within the past couple of months of the funding that's available for estuaries with critical needs in the form of grants. Got the satellite beach and beachside communities that are affected by the FUDS program that formerly used defense sites and PFAS that are endangering our ground and our groundwater. Work with them as currently as last week, actually. With the
I'm going to have to stop you there, Congressman. I'm so sorry for interrupting you. I'm sorry, but we have this time schedule with EFS, and so I'm so sorry. But we are starting with you on this question, and we're going to change gears a little bit. The war in Ukraine, it rages on, seemingly with no end in clear sight. How do you think the current administration has handled the war, and would you urge the president to do something differently?
Well, actually, you have to understand that rationalizing with Putin, an irrational person, is just about impossible. I think the Biden administration has been handling the war in Ukraine properly. That's one of the few things I give him a good grade in, actually. But still, we need to be focusing on the issues that are facing us at home, like record inflation, record high gas prices and shortages, making America energy independent again. We should give Ukraine support for sure, but we should not send Americans to fight on the ground. The only way we can do that is by getting this economy moving again.
Great, thank you. Joanne, how do you think that our current administration has handled the war in Ukraine, and would you urge President Biden to do something differently?
So I think this is an area where we actually agree, because I also think that it's been handled properly. And I also agree that we need to continue to help the Ukrainians hold back Putin's aggression, because, you know, it's in our best interests to make sure that we continue to be a leader in maintaining the world order that our World War II veterans fought so hard and sacrificed to achieve. And if we don't continue to do that, then we may find ourselves being overtaken by those very same powers. So we actually agree. But that's why, you know, we really need to take this threat seriously. So I was really shocked when we had members of our representatives that actually proposed legislation to withhold Ukrainian support to make a political statement about our Mexican border security, and voted against banning Russian oil when they had invaded. You know, this is playing politics with people's lives and with our national security. And as our representative, I will not do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to stay with you, Joanne, here again. A lot has been said and written about election integrity these last 2 years. What are your thoughts on the topic and on recent legislation some have called restrictive when it comes to voting? And for the record, I would like to ask the congressman if he thinks that Biden's election was valid in his opinion. But we're going to start with Joanne Terry and election integrity.
Sure. Thank you for that question. Yes, our free and fair elections are what makes American democracy the envy of the world. You know, it was horrifying to see our own elected officials, including our current representative, vote against certifying the 2020 election results with no court-established evidence. And just recently, he voted to keep the ability to do it again in 2024. Luckily, that was voted down. But we must make sure that our elections are secure, not just for casting and counting ballots, but also against the disinformation campaigns that are meant to cast doubt on our election results if one side decides that they don't like the outcome of the real vote. You know, we have truth in advertising laws to protect our money from fraud, but we don't have a way to protect our vote from fraud. And if our democracy is to survive, we must value our vote at least as much as we value our money. So as our federal representative, I will work to ensure election integrity from all angles, including getting money out of politics and developing information campaigns against disinformation. If we lose our ability to vote and have that vote count, we lose our ability to hold our elected officials accountable to the people, and we cannot let that happen. Thank you.
Okay, and so now we're up to Congressman Posey. Same question, election integrity. Was Biden's election valid in your opinion? And some of this recent legislation that some have called restrictive, voting. What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, first of all, I think I get a couple seconds extra because she blamed me for not stopping the restrictions on buying Russian oil. If you actually read that bill, there weren't any restrictions, and it said any restrictions that were proposed could be waived. So it's really good if you read the bills and know what's in them. Election reform, you might recall that my very first assignment as a state senator was to reform Florida's election laws after Bush Gore. Prior to the last election, it was the most contentious and closest election in American history. The bill I passed was bipartisan, overwhelming bipartisan support because I invited the other side to participate in it to make sure every vote counted and to make sure every voter should feel like their vote counted. It passed 120-0 in the Senate, passed 38-2, and 120-0 in the House, 38-2 in the Senate. The current elections that the other side is proposing include welfare for politicians. Somebody that says they want to get money out of politics, really, I'm surprised to hear it would be supporting a bill that provides welfare for politicians. It gives us $6 from federal taxpayers' dollars for every $1 in low bill campaign funding that the candidate receives.
Okay, I have to stop you right there, Congressman, but we're starting with you again. What was your reaction to the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding Roe versus Wade?
Well, I understand what they said. They read the Constitution and they said there's nothing in the Constitution that allows the federal government to regulate abortions. The 10th Amendment says even that nothing that's not contained in the Constitution is left to the states to decide. And so, I'm personally pro-life, except in cases of rape, incest, or the life of the mother. Currently in Florida, I believe you can have an abortion legally till the end of the second trimester. That policy is in the future in the hands of the Florida legislature and the voters themselves actually considering a constitutional amendment. Congress should be focused really on issues that are in their domain, such as inflation, which makes every dollar anyone earns or has saved worth less. They should be more concerned with energy independence and bringing the price of gas back down to $2 a gallon. And they should be interested in securing our border.
I'm going to stop you there, Congressman. I'm so sorry, but we do have an inflation question coming up. So hang tight to that. Joanne, your thoughts on the Roe versus Wade ruling?
Sure. Well, protecting the civil rights of American citizens is the responsibility of the federal government. And whether you believe abortions are morally wrong is a religious and a personal decision and should be made by a woman, her faith, her family, and her physician, and not the government. The government, no level of government should be inside a woman's body, especially in America. That is too much government control. My stepdaughter and my stepdaughter-in-law are both pregnant right now. And if something goes wrong with their pregnancies, the thought that they would have to go to the government and somehow prove that they are not cold-blooded murderers in order to save their lives is unthinkable to me. So over 60% of Americans agree with the provisions of Roe versus Wade. And so I will work to codify those provisions because it has saved lives over the last 50 years. An abortion ban will be an economic, a social, and a political disaster. And it's clear that the GOP's plans for government intervention in our lives won't stop there. So we need to stop it now. And the only way that we can stop it is by voting for a candidate that will protect our rights. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to stay with you, Joanne. There's been a lot of talk about how our representatives locally and nationally all too often follow their party's leaders instead of truly representing what the people want. For Joanne, I want you to cite a few examples of things that you do not agree with President Biden on And for Congressman Posey, I would like you to cite a few examples of things you do agree with President Biden on.
Sure. Sure, absolutely. Thank you. I have two examples. I do not agree with student loan forgiveness that President Biden just did. I think that what we need to do is we need to find a way for our students who are in debt to be able to pay off the loan, perhaps by converting them to interest free and allowing the principal, not just the interest, to be tax deductible. And I also think that we need to structurally change how we fund post-secondary education, both academic and vocational. And then one of the things that I differ with Representative Posey is that he changed the Social Security laws recently to make it easier for our seniors to go back to work and to work more hours. And we have almost 30% of the people in this district who take Social Security. And what we really need to do is raise the total income limit before those benefits become taxable. So those are the kinds of real things that I think will that I differ with my party, and I differ with Representative Posey, but that will really benefit the people here. Thank you.
Okay, and then Congressman Posey, some examples of like the things you agree with President Biden on.
Well, I agree with him on the Ukraine. I believe he has some of the same goals that I do, but we have different ways of reaching those goals. I have a great bipartisan record, and have even co-sponsored legislation with Suzanne Bonamici, Derek Kilmer, Frederick Wilson, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Maxine Waters, Sheila Jackson Lee, Gregory Meeks, Carolyn Maloney, Ted Deutsch, Kirsten Sinema. I mean, and the list can go on and on and on. These are co-sponsorships where we work together on legislations. I work hard to find common ground, and I find it in the realm of space. I find it in the realm of financial services. I find it in defense of our friends in the Middle East. And that's a record that's helped me accomplish my goals as far back as the state legislature.
Great, thank you, Congressman. And we are staying with you on this one, and it's the inflation question. So no one issue has really impacted us more this year than inflation. In your opinion, what is at the root of it, and how would you try and address it?
Well, we know that inflation, as I started saying last time, it makes every dollar earned worth less, every dollar saved worth less. The number one thing we need to do to stop the inflation is stop the war on fossil fuels. That's what's causing our gas and energy prices to go up so much. And you don't have a product in the room you're sitting in, nor does anyone who will be watching this, that doesn't have a lot of fuel and energy cost included in it. So stopping the war on fossil fuels, which is our gas and our energy price increases, which fuels the increases in everything else, is the very, very first step. We don't need 187,000 more IRS agents. We need 187,000 more border police to stop the invasion at our southern border. Or we could use another 187,000 people in the Veterans Administration to get their backlog of veterans claims and help our veterans get the services that they have earned that they're entitled to. The last thing we need is more of the same energy policy that makes us dependent on the energy to run this country on countries that hate us. They're winning, we're losing.
I have to stop you there, Congressman. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Same question for Joanne Terry. Inflation, how would you address it?
Sure. Well, yeah, all of us are feeling the impact of inflation. And I think that the root causes of the global inflation really is the unique coincidence of the supply side and the demand side pressures on goods and services and energy as we recover from COVID. And as the economy normalizes, there are definitely things that we can do. And so that's why I was surprised to see that our representative voted against the price gouging by the oil companies. I mean, when it comes to fuel, let's be clear, we don't have a fuel shortage like we did in the 70s. We don't go to the gas stations and find the pumps empty. This is about pricing. And there are things that we can do, like avoiding the price gouging. And we also, I agree, we need to get less dependent on oil and foreign oil. And so investing in electric vehicles and clean energy not only grows our economy, but it also reduces the demand side pressure on oil, and therefore it would reduce prices. Thank you. I have more, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. You have an opportunity to rebut that, Congressman, because she brought up your record on oil, if you wish. Or
Yes, I would. I would, John. Some people just don't live in the real world. Some people think the price gouging bill would do crazy things like limit the amount that you could pay for a gallon of gasoline. If somebody came out tomorrow and said, okay, I'm going to pass legislation to make gas cost no more than $1 a gallon, that would be wildly popular. And the representative would think they're doing a great thing. But if it passed, the reality is we would not have any gasoline because you can't produce and market it for $1 a gallon. So I'd rather have gas at $4 a gallon than not be able to have any gas at all and to shut down this entire country.
I'm going to stop you there, Congressman. I'm so sorry. We have one last question. We have time for one more question. For Joanne Terry, we're going to start with you. We've seen billions spent on the Artemis program, and we know how important space is. But the program the Artemis has obviously yet to launch. Is that a good investment of our taxpayer money? What role should private industry be playing and paying in space?
Well, I definitely believe in strong private and public partnerships. The whole space industry started as defense and national security after World War II and into the 60s. And I think that it will forever be a very close-knit partnership. I think if you ask anybody that was lining the streets to watch the Artemis launch, that you would see it is a good investment, not just for our global superiority in space, but it is really one of the things that I think that can unite us right now as Americans. And at this point in time, we really need something that can unite us as Americans and break through these divisive culture wars. So for those reasons, I think that, and the technology development that it provides, I do think it's a good investment. Thank you.
Great. Same question for you, Congressman.
Well, space is important to our national security. It's important to our technological advancement. Space is important to the economics of our country, and ultimately, it's going to be responsible for the survival of our species. Very important. We have an office motto that we sell space every day in every way. Every intern knows that. Every employee knows that. Congressman Babin, the lead Republican on the Space Committee, said he knows of absolutely no greater and more effective advocate for the space program than me. I formed a bipartisan group called Space Advocates to better educate staff who drive so much of how members vote in Congress to learn more about our space program. It's regularly attended by over 100 members. I give away a congressional pin or free coffee and donuts, and it helps move it. So I passed the Commercial Space Support Vehicle Act, the Race for Space Act, the Space Exploration and Utilization Act. I actually even got more than $500,000 for the Astronaut Memorial Foundation and Scholarship Foundation.
I'm going to have to I'm sorry. We have time for a quick closing remark from both of you. Why should people vote for you? We're going to start with Joanne Terry this time, because openings were with Congressman Posey. So, Joanne, why should people vote for you?
Well, again, I want to thank Florida Today and Representative Posey and everyone who is watching for allowing us to have this forum today. You know, I know many voters in this district have never considered voting for a Democrat, but I'm asking the voters to set aside the media stereotypes. I am not the far left socialist that the media portrays me as. And I am no longer willing to let divisive partisan media and corporate funded establishment politicians pit us against each other as they consolidate power, take away our rights, and shift financial burden to the working people of this district. I've talked with people from across the political spectrum, and we all want a fair shot at participating in our economic growth, and we all want to protect our environment from irresponsible overdevelopment. I will protect our individual rights and freedoms, but I will also protect our right and our freedom to be individuals. I'm asking for 2 years to prove that I can represent this district better, and I'll protect your right for the voters to hold me accountable in 2024 if they don't agree. And you can find out more about me at joanneterry.com, and thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Joanne. And now we have Congressman Posey. Why should people vote you in again, sir?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the voters for putting their faith and trust in me. Although I'm often guilty of getting as angry and frustrated with Congress as you do, I'm still proud that Florida Today was right when they called me a problem solver, because that's what I do best. As you've heard today, I have the strong record of supporting bipartisan common sense measures that move America in the right direction. And I oppose those which take us in the wrong direction, such as the reckless spending, the war on energy, which both cause inflation, open borders, and the woke agenda. In closing, remember that, as my father once said, candidates who throw dirt cause your country to lose ground. Oh, and by the way, I will continue returning my pay raise every single year. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
Great. I want to really thank the two of you so much for taking the time out of your days to join us here, and good luck to both of you on the campaign trail and obviously at the polls. I'm John Torres signing off. Thank you so much for watching.